Hello students, welcome back to my class. Today we are going to study Anthony Trollope's chapters from an autobiography, and here I am taking chapter 6 that deals with Berkshire Towers and three clerks in its title. So Anthony Trollope, as you know, was a Victorian fiction writer, a novelist, and also a writer of miscellaneous prose. Trollope in this autobiography is narrating about his emergence as a writer. The first chapter means this chapter number 6 that I am dealing today. It is dealing with the quest of Anthony Trollope to become a writer, and he wants to be a writer for chiefly two reasons. One, that is for the pecuniary benefit, and the second one is for the fame. So at the beginning of this chapter, he is telling that I had read soon after the two first volumes of Charles Merivale's History of the Romans under the Empire, and had got into some correspondence with the author's brother. That means he is telling that at the beginning of his career as a writer, because he had that ambition to be a professional writer of this period, he went through various history and he wanted to write about the history or the historical events and all that. And he had a taste generally for Latin literature, which has been one of the chief delights of his later life. And initially in his career as a writer, he was so much obsessed with the historical characters that he went through. As he is telling, I lived in Caesar and debated with myself constantly whether he crossed the Rubicon as a tyrant or as a patriot. So he is telling at the beginning of his career he was much obsessed with history, and he lived history in his dream, in his consciousness, in his subconscious thought. All the time there were the historical characters moving around and making the debate. And he started his writing career by writing certain articles in Dublin University magazine. They were the result of very much labor, but there came from them no pecuniary product. So look at it, that immediately he writes that there was no pecuniary product. That means from the very beginning of his writing career, Trollope was much conscious about the professional approach of the writing career. And he is later on telling that when he demanded some payment for that, he was told by the Dean of Ely, as the author of the work in question now was my friend, but I think I was wronged, as I certainly had no intention of obliging him by my criticism. And he was told that there is no such payment for such type of writing. And ultimately he is telling that up to the end of 1857, I had received £55 for the hard work of 10 years. So in his career, first 10 years, the first decade of his career only earned him £55. And Trollope was not satisfied with his own performance. And then he started writing his first novel, that was Berkshire Towers, that I adopted a system of writing which for some years afterwards I found to be very serviceable to me. So, he was working at that time in a post office, and he used to travel 3 to 4 hours by train, and he was thinking that how to utilize that time for his writing career. So, he devised a way by bringing a little tablet, and after doing few days of exercise, he was able to write on that in the train carriage. And he is providing many quotations, many references, and one of such references is from Thomas Carlyle, when Carlyle told that sit still and label his thoughts. A writer or a reader should not write in a moving vehicle, but he is telling that I have to make use of this time, the journey between my home and the post office. And in this way, he wrote his first novel, and after completing this, whose title is Berkshire Towers, the first novel of him is Berkshire Towers, he took it to the publisher Mr. W. Longman, and W. Longman sent it to some critics for making the analysis, and after that there was a payment. He was given £100 in advance, and it was decided that the novel will be published on half profit system. And the suggestion was that from the analyzer that the novel should be divided into two parts, but he is telling that he was not ready to accept that, and he is talking about the unity of a literary piece, and he was against the contemporary practice of serial publication. And after the publication of Berkshire Towers, he is telling that I received my £100 in advance with profound delight, and he is telling that why he is delighted, and he is telling, he is elaborating that he is always against the unprofessional attitude of writer. A writer should be professional, and he should be paid like any other professional in our social life. And he is making a comparison that they require the practice of a so-called virtue which is contrary to nature and which in my eyes would be of no virtue if it were practiced. That means those people who are telling that the writers, the artists should not be professional in their monetary or pecuniary approach, he is telling that the relationship between human endeavor and reward is very natural, and those who do not accept it, they are not accepting the very human virtue and natural tendencies. He is elaborating that all material progress has come from man's desire to do the best he can for himself and those about him, and civilization and Christianity itself have been made possibly by such progress. So, if man has made progress, if civilization has made progress, it is because of the man's desire to do the best. And when man will do the best, when he will be rewarded, when there will be the compensation for his efforts. And he is citing some arguments in his favor by giving the example of Shakespeare. He is telling Shakespeare worked always for money, giving the best of his intellect to support his trade as an actor. Therefore, he is telling that Shakespeare remains the most valuable literature of England. And he is also giving the examples of Byron, Tennyson, Scott, Dickens, Macaulay, so on and so forth, in support of his argument for professional writing. And at the end of the argument, he is telling that brains that are unbought will never serve the public much. Take away from English authors their copyrights, and you would very soon take away from England her authors. You can mark this line for explanation, because this line can be asked for explanation of 5 marks, or by citing this line, the question can be asked that how Anthony Trollope is arguing in favor of professionalism in literature or novel writing. So, for that, all these arguments you have to arrange in your answer. And he is also telling that devoting himself to literature with industry, perseverance, certain necessary aptitudes and fair average talents may succeed in gaining a livelihood, as another man does in another profession. So, the writer must practice all these things. So, asking for the pecuniary benefit is not any immoral or not any unethical practice on the part of the literature. And the second desire that he wants, the second ambition of him that comes from being a writer is about reputation. And he is telling, I have certainly always had also before my eyes the charms of reputation. Over and above the money view of the question, I wished from the beginning to be something more than a clerk in the post office. He was a clerk in the post office. So, he wanted to create a reputation for himself beyond that. So, he is telling that by being a writer, I can not only enhance my revenue, my prosperity, but also I can bring up a better reputation. So, for 2 mark question also, this can be asked that what are the 2 motives behind Anthony Trollope's desire to be a writer. And he is telling that a man writes his books badly or paints his pictures badly because he can make his money faster in that fashion than by doing them well, and at the same time proclaims them to be the best he can do. If in fact he sells shabby or broadcloth, he is dishonest. He is telling that a true artist, a true writer never wants to produce any bad work, and if he sells those bad work as good products, then definitely he is dishonest. So, along with the pecuniary benefit and the reputation, he is also talking about honesty and integrity on the part of a writer, a professional writer. And after that, he is telling that Berkshire Towers, for which I had received £100 in advance, sold well enough to bring me further payments, and from that, over a prolonged period, he got around or more than £727 that he is calculating that he had received from the sale of this book during 20 years. And then he wrote the next novel, The 3 Clerks, and he went to the publisher again, and this time I could not induce him to understand that a lump sum down was more pleasant than a deferred annuity. He wanted a lump sum payment against this novel, but Mr. Longman couldn't agree to his demand. And the publisher rather said that he endeavored to convince me that I might lose more than I gained, even though I should get more money by going elsewhere. It is for you, said he, to think whether our names on your title page are not worth more to you than the increased payments. So, the publisher told him that if he will enter into any such agreement with the publisher by selling the novel at the beginning, taking a lump sum payment, then he may be on the losing side. But Trollope is not convinced. Therefore, he is telling, I didn't think much of Messrs. Longman's name, but I liked it based at the bottom of a check. He is telling that the name of the publisher at the bottom of the book, more than that, I wanted the name of the publisher at the bottom of the check. So, in this way, he published the novel The Three Clerks by taking it to other publishers, Messrs. Horst and Blackett, and then to another Mr. Bentley, and he was able to sell it for 250 pounds. So, instead of sharing the profit through sale, he was able to sell it for the lump sum 250 pounds. And thereafter he is talking about the novel. He is telling about the plot, about the characters, and here he is talking about some characters, and he is talking that how these characters in his novel, they are taken from his familiar acquaintances in the society. So, characters from the real life are there in his novels, and as a result, The Three Clerks became a good novel. It got success, and he is talking about his visit to his mother in Italy, where his mother was also a writer, but when he visited his mother in 1857, by that time her mother had stopped her writing career, but she was very happy that her son has picked up this career as a writer. But here he is trying to present through this part of the chapter that how not only the characters of a novel are taken from real life, but also the incidents of the real life sometimes provide inspiration for the incidents within the fiction. That means he is going to tell us that sometimes the experiences of the reality are more fictitious than the fiction. So, he visited Italy and he wanted to go to Verona, and in these two places, in Milan and Verona, he had different experiences in the hotel. In Milan, he couldn't find a hotel, and ultimately when he went there and found a bed in the hotel, he found there were so many people in the bed, which was a very strange thing to him. Similarly, in Verona, he sent where the telegram was invented and introduced very new at that time. So, he made the telegram to the hotel that he will be reaching there by midnight, and the bed and the food should be booked. But to his utter surprise, he found in the station that there was a band party, and there were some carriages and a gentleman in proper dress coming, and with all the band and declaration receiving him and asking for more people, his troop. But when he introduced that it is only his wife and his brother-in-law, they were surprised, and they were taken to the hotel where everything was lighted up and decorated, and everywhere they were attended by the servants, and he was given the treatment of a royal, and he was thinking that how much it will cost to him. But the owner of the hotel realized the situation, and rather he apologized that it was his blunder that he accepted the telegram in such a manner. So, in this way, he is trying to tell his experience in this part of the autobiography that life is sometimes more fictitious than fiction, and things may happen beyond our own imagination. And then he is talking about his next novel that he was planning, that was Dr. Thorne. And here in this novel, he took the help of his brother, to whom he said to sketch him a plot, and his brother accordingly sketched a plot. But he is telling that I had never taken another man's work and deliberately framed my work upon it. So, he is talking about the concept of the idea of plagiarism, and he is, as a professional writer, he is telling that every writer must be very honest and full of integrity. Plagiarism should not be the means of writing. Therefore, he is telling plagiary existed and was very common, but was not known as a sin in his time. But still, he was very much conscious about not taking any other man's work or effort into his own. So, in this context, he is talking about the work of Shakespeare and other writers, and he is telling that Shakespeare, the greatest of the literature, had taken the ideas from other sources, but at that time it was not considered as plagiarism, or it should not be considered as plagiarism, because Shakespeare had not merely imitated or copied those ideas, rather he had transformed it into a new idea, into a new concept of human life, human experience, or a new perception of the humanity. So, this is his view about the plagiarism, and then he is talking about his experience of dealing in the publication of his third novel, Dr. Thorne, and he is telling it is early 1858 and he was given the charge to go to Egypt to make some negotiation for the post office for delivery of the mail through railway. And before going to Egypt, he had to finalize the deal of this third novel with the publisher. Therefore, he went to Mr. Bentley and demanded £400 for the copyright, and he acceded. But the very next day, Mr. Bentley came to his office and told that he can pay £400 and the best deal will be £300. And he immediately accepted it. I was intent upon the larger sum and in furious haste, for I had but an hour at my disposal. He had no time in his disposal. Therefore, I rushed to Chapman and Hall in Piccadilly and said what I had said to Mr. Edward Chapman in a quick torrent of words. And he went to another publisher, Mr. Chapman, and in a very quick torrent, because he had a very small time in his hand, so very quickly he delivered his ideas to Mr. Chapman, and he said that he supposed he might as well do as I desired, and Mr. Chapman immediately accepted. And this is not the first instance that his hurried speech had convinced someone. Previously also in this chapter he had talked about his hurried speech in Milan, when he was desperate to find a hotel room and he had gone to that hotel by bribing the servant, and before the owner of the hotel he spoke French for the first time in his life in a very hurried manner, and the hotel owner was convinced. So here he is trying to impress upon his readers that when you are very sincere and when your emotions are backing your narrative, the narrative is very much convincing. So in this way, in this chapter, he is telling that art has never created an original idea, but transcended the ordinary to extraordinary by the work of the artist or the writer. So in this chapter, this is a smaller chapter than the second chapter. The second chapter we will be dealing in another class. In this chapter, he is talking about his evolution as a writer. from no pecuniary benefit to selling his third novel for £400 and for getting what he wanted. He is presenting to the readers the idea of the emergence of a professional writer in Victorian period. I hope you will be able to answer the question that already I have told. So, you please look at that and also the explanation that I have given. Thank you.